Okay.
Okay, so let me try to explain that. So this is this broader story around how do we want to compete with GitHub, and it feels like GitHub has been built with a slightly different approach in mind, while we iterate in a way that we deliver small changes and try to build larger features later. How GitHub did that, they decided to build a solid foundation that has been well designed with all the primitives and all the building blocks that make it easier to actually build on top of them later. So they managed to build a really robust eventing system. There is probably close to 100 or even more, I haven't checked that recently, events that GitHub is being able to emit, so and you can subscribe to them in your actions, right? They do have a quite good catalog of the actions and marketplace. I think this is how they call it. And then they do have actions like themselves, right? They use reusable components that you can just pull from marketplace, inject into your pipeline, just subscribe to some events, and suddenly it's going to work. So our response to that is that we want to build the catalog, which is the CI catalog. Right now, the CI catalog hosts our templates. We made some changes to the templates to make them a bit more reusable, right? We introduced the interpolation technology, which is also something that GitHub has to some extent. And we are delivering a couple of other changes to templates to make them more like reusable components. But the components based on templates are not going to be the replacement for actions, because actions uh, are designed in a slightly different way. So our templates describe whole pipelines or many jobs that you can merge into your
Yeah.
configuration,
And
right?
basically, we have a single pipeline definition, and we just merge it and
Yeah,
generate
we
that.
can have child pipelines in there and things like
Yeah.
that, but it's still, the current templates operate on a like whole configuration level, right? And actions are a bit different because you can use actions to compose individual jobs, right? And there are some principles of how those operate. For example, the principle of making it easy to pass data between actions in a way that one action can generate outputs, the other action takes in those outputs as input. So our response to this specifically is GitLab steps, right? So that would make it more like GitHub solution. So with CI catalog and steps, we are able to model actions. But there's one missing piece of a puzzle. It is the whole eventing system that right now does not exist at GitLab either, right? So this is something that we want to build. Like there are no abstractions, no code right now available in the code base to support this, to support eventing. So my blueprint, which is still unmerged, the GitLab Events platform blueprint, is an attempt to build all those abstractions that will make it easier for engineers to emit events from within the code base with a very low cost, similarly to incrementing a Prometheus counter. You just put emit something and suddenly it's there, and other teams can consume these events. Of course, like the GitLab Events platform is just a foundational solution, right? It's a solution. It's this design document describing how to introduce this additional layer of abstraction for managing events in GitLab. Then, of course, if we would need to connect that abstraction into the CI itself, right? So that's the separate design doc called GitLab CI events. And with all those pieces of a puzzle, if we do a good job in connecting the dots and building all those things, we should be able to provide users this experience that is quite similar to what GitHub offers. And in my opinion, that's a major competitive gap that we have in our product, and it would be really cool to fill it in. There is I don't know if you have seen that there is this document of mine uh, that like, let me link that from the agenda. That's the summary of the feature gap, and there is a bit more in there because it's not only events, steps, and catalog, but it's also making it easier to automate things with all the steps. So we are thinking about either building a domain-specific language that we would evaluate in a different way than a regular job, right? So it can be maybe a domain-specific language we could evaluate in much less expensive. So if we build a language or use a language that is hermetic and isolated by default in a stack virtual machine, for example, that it runs on, we won't need all those virtual machines and this complex technology to provision them, and we could like create a single runner that has capacity to run thousands or even millions of simple scripts using that language without all the overhead of virtualization and things like that. So there's also an idea to leverage WebAssembly to do that when someone needs a bit more flexibility, and hermetic language designed to operate with GitLab's API is not enough. So there are many things in there, and I think the vision is quite solid. Of course, there are gaps, and if you have any ideas about how to fill those gaps, we would definitely appreciate your input. The challenge, as always here at GitLab, is capacity, and there are like no people available to build this thing. So that's my TLDR and a summary. So if you have questions, just ask.
I was not aware of this feature gap analysis, I think. Yeah, I think I haven't seen this, but I definitely saw the blueprint or something about the WebAssembly support in Runner. Yeah.
Yeah, so WebAssembly is just one of the solutions, the hermetic language, either custom built or a language like Starlark. That's also another solution.
What I would, so I think it's always a very bad product strategy to try to catch up with someone. And I think what you shared is very important, but my question would be that what do our users actually need and want? And especially, what are the shortcomings of GitHub Actions?
Yeah,
And
I
designed for
completely
that.
agree.
And my first idea, just to give you some idea as well, where but you haven't spoken about yet, and what I would strongly recommend looking into is to make our, I don't know how to call them now, pipelines testable and kind of runnable locally. I don't know what it actually means, but testable definitely. So that
So I agree with
and
that. So basically,
I don't know if GitHub Actions is such. I don't know if they can test actions easily or not, but I think that's something that could be a big thing if we can design for that already.
Yeah, I think if you read the Camille's GitLab steps design doc, it already covers those items. Like you should be able to easily run a set of GitLab steps with a CLI tool locally, and that it's going to be designed in a way that it works exactly the same way in the CI environment. So I agree with you, and I think that we have never really been trying to catch up on GitHub here, and that's also the reason why these features do not exist yet, right? But after actually listening to our users and customers, it's clear that they not only want things like that, but they also need them, and we know, but we need them too, right? We are the first, probably the biggest customer of GitLab CI, and it's clear that even with the uh, triage serverless, which it's now called Triage Ops. Do you remember the project? We started this as a serverless
I remember.
serverless solution
Yes.
on native. The engineering productivity team managed to adopt that, and they further extended it. It still runs somewhere in Cloud Run, right? Yet it could easily run on the GitLab itself with the eventing system and the much less expensive technology to run simple automation scripts than on virtual machines or even the Cloud Run. So this is something that we need, ourselves. We are, extending and building a fancy project that otherwise would be just part of the product. And that's probably the goal.
Yeah. I don't have actually anything to add, and just thanks for sharing all these. It like.
I just wanted to add a few things. First, to add to Victor's, I mean, you can be number one if you are repeating after someone, because they are number one, you are repeating after them, right? So you have to come up with something novel to beat them, to be your number one. And the second thing is I have previously, I think, shared with many people. I think a lot of people I have this automatable DevOps issue. And I feel like what we have just described and discussed is kind of that issue picked apart. I created it 2 years ago, and I talked about components, reusability, and all of that. And the missing piece that is there in the issue, and we haven't discussed that, is a possibility. I'm also talking this through. You probably know that, but I'm talking it through because we are recording. Hello, people who watch this. The missing bit is a way to describe a proper workflow, which is not just a direct acyclic graph, but something that can run for a longer time, like a week, and doesn't necessarily consume resources for the whole duration. And it can have conditions and loops and, waiting for external events and so on and so forth. And it doesn't have to be expensive as well. So like, basically right now, I see the need for this everywhere. We have this issue as an example, for the need for the external CI jobs, and I linked it in the notes. Basically, the proposal is to have a new special syntax in the CI YAML that waits for an external signal, blocks the pipeline, and then when it gets the signal and we continue, and we want to use this to wait for a GitOps saturation. And when it has finished it, the pipeline can continue, but it's just one single particular use case, and we are adding syntax for that. I mean, there can be so many other things that, the end users may want to chain, and these are potentially steps in the workflow. So we are kind of building everything, but not the most important bit, I think, which is what would beat GitHub, actually, I think, because they don't have this.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that the reason why we are not doing that right now is that we are probably just missing a proposal of how it could look like. So in the CI events blueprint, there's an extensive discussion about syntax and how we could actually model workflows, subscriptions, and connect each one to another one. And that's probably the place where we have around 5 proposals right now. Each of them is something that I'm not particularly happy with yet. So that's where, if you have a solid idea about how we could do that, like that's probably a place where we could benefit from having a proposal for this, because it's not actionable to just say let's do something better than GitHub, right? I agree. Like, I think everyone agrees that we should, right? Like, how to do that is the difficult part. So if you have any ideas, feel free to contribute there.
I think the how to do that is the second most difficult part. The
So
really difficult one is what Mika spoke about, is the what would be that. So it's not the how, but even the topic. And up to this point, I'm not very familiar with GitHub Actions, but most of what you shared is more like, let's catch up with GitHub Actions. But there isn't, I don't know if there's anything how we would move forward, how we would bypass them again in those three proposals that
Yeah,
you
I
shared.
agree. By how I meant also what, right? Because it's like maybe just
Okay.
of using the proper word, but right now there is no description of what other than the 5 proposals we have in the CI events blueprint. Yeah, and I think that probably if I had to think about where we can actually differentiate and build something better, that's the good area to focus on. But we discussed this briefly with Mikhail the last time, and then there are probably more questions than answers at this point. So again, it's not really actionable. So we would need to brainstorm a bit what and how of this workflow definition. And I do strongly think that it should happen inside the file. Like we should model those workflows not in the UI, but instead to do that in configuration files.
I think an important stepping stone to understanding what, how, is the realization that this is more than just CI, like product-wise. And again, Grzegorz, we discussed that, just saying it on camera. It's important to realize that automation is, I mean, hopefully for the whole DevOps cycle, and not just for CI. Under the cover, it can and probably even should use the runner in some shape or form, but conceptually, I saw other requirements, like when I create a label and I add a label on an issue, I want a comment to be added as well to the issue. That conceptually, product-wise, it has nothing to do with continuous integration, right?
Yeah, that's
So
true, but like this is also how the product looks like currently, right? We have a ton of features outside of the verify stage, building on top of what is in there in the verify, like all the security features, govern, compliance. That's not necessarily a verify, right? But it's like
Gregor, I think I totally agree with that. I think what's important here is that even our terminology, calling it GitLab CI or GitLab CI CD, is limiting. Just put one by the other, like GitLab CI versus GitHub, what was it called? Actions. It's
yeah,
like,
I know. Like basically, if I to be honest, I would say that it was a mistake for us not to move forward with our serverless vision, because we would have a generic compute platform. Like we could do anything and it would be disconnected from a CI and statuses and runners, right? It would be, run something in a serverless way, and like, you can consume the results any way you want. And we were quite close to achieving that objective. So right now, this offering does not exist. And we are kind of constrained in the CI space because there's no alternative, right? With the serverless, we could have this alternative. Right now, it does not exist. Everything that we had built for like a year, probably like 100% of code has been removed from code base. Like there's nothing left. So we can't even build on top of that or try to extend it, make it work, right? Because it has been removed and it would be very difficult to even like bring it back. So unfortunately, we are constrained. Of course, it's also matter of nomenclature. We can just not call things CI, right? But under the hood, it's still, those things still use
pipelines
runners and CI. So that would be a bit maybe dishonest. But well, we don't have serverless. We don't have this generic compute platform right now.
Yeah.
we almost have I mean, we just need an API to run a job and not show it in UI, basically. That's the execution API. I have an issue for that as well.
But this exists,
But
right? Like now we have chat jobs, right? Chat ops.
maybe it does. I
To
I
some
don't know.
extent, but probably I would say that it's not a very good feature. But in some limited ways, we do have detached jobs that will never appear in like those are detached from pipelines. Like in the UI, because in practice you cannot really run a job separately from running a pipeline. But
Right now.
yeah, but those are the details, right? These
Yeah.
are the implementation details. I think if you want to make progress, we should more focus on
And that's what I was
like
trying to
high level
point out.
ideas.
Yeah, that's we need to conceptually decouple from CI, and then we can have a clearer vision that this is what we need to do, and then we can figure out how to do it. Use runner under the hood, do that, do this, anything else, have the events platform and so on. But conceptually, we need to understand what we want to do, and that's automation, I think, for the whole cycle.
Yeah, so I think I would agree with that, right? So this would directly influence the proposal in the GitLab CI events, but maybe it's just a matter of putting an additional indirection layer between the GitLab events platform and GitLab CI events design doc, right? And that would be this additional layer would be the thing that you are describing, and GitLab CI events feature would become just a consumer of that additional capabilities in that middle layer. And then with that, we could then just build uh, another feature set built on this thing that is in the middle between just plain events and nothing else, and GitLab CI, because the GitLab CI thing is still going to be required because our customers are expecting it to be available. So
Yeah.
how this middle layer could look like, it's still not clear. So in order to make this actionable, we would probably need to brainstorm of how it could work, how it could fit in between the GitLab CI events and GitLab events platform layers.
Yeah, and this is very similar to what we concluded with our previous conversation. And Victor, we wanted to bring you in here, and Nico as well, but he's on PTO at the moment. So what I suggested we do is we environments work together with Verify to move this forward somehow. At least try
And
to
not
do
only
that.
verify, because right now the team that is motivated the most probably to move this vision forward is the package team, because they need to do things whenever someone is pushing a package because of compliance reasons, because of different reasons, like
We have
they
similar
value.
needs. Yeah, we have similar needs as well. We need to do things when stuff happens.
Exactly, yeah. So let me think about what we can do to actually move forward with this common vision. Like the best tool I have available for us right now is the engineering design workflow, right? So that's the workflow in which we can write a technical, like semi-technical document to describe the vision and describe how it connects to the other two, like the GitLab CI, GitLab events platform that is below, and the GitLab CI events that is going to be above. And I probably like don't have another recommendation, because for me right now it's even difficult to imagine how it could look like. But I do hear you and I do see why it can be beneficial. But the challenge with software engineering is that tiny details matter like a lot, and one tiny detail can change everything like completely, and we need to capture those details. the most important one somewhere.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also thought proposal would be the best thing to start with. We can probably copy many bits and pieces from the existing proposals about the like what we want, what the problem is, and have a new proposal, I suppose, with that bigger goal. And when,
So basically, I have some thoughts about that. So let me try to share them. So GitLab GitLab Events platform, this foundational thing, is going to be designed in a way that anyone can emit an event, right? There are going to be the getaways, also an abstract gateway in code. So you can, for example, build a gateway that is going to intercept all of the events, filter out those that are irrelevant, maybe, and then just pass them through to another feature like GitLab CI events, right? So we can have also this gateway that can pass all the events that are required to a different feature or different area and consume those anyway we see fit, right? So it's not like, so this is going to be also this fan out mechanism, right? So there's a single event generated and there are multiple getaways for it. If it matches, like 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 getaways, this event is going to be duplicated so that other features can also consume it, right? So another solution is to not to make this thing that you want to build, Mikhail, like as a middle layer between events and CI events, but instead build that on the same level as CI events, as just a different access mechanism for consuming events, for example, right?
yeah, that's what I
So,
was thinking. Yeah.
so this would probably be a bit more practical and easier to understand. So maybe, so anyways, we just need to start brainstorming session somewhere. So maybe as the first iteration, just open a Google Doc, write your thoughts in there. I will provide mine. We will invite other people. Maybe something will come out of it, and maybe after a couple of iterations we will be able to describe, like copy paste that into a design document.
Sounds good. Yep. I'll start the doc.
So my question to Victor is actually, do you have any capacity in the environments team to work on that? Are there any engineers, except Mikhail, who's really passionate about that? What is like clear? Are there any passionate engineers who would like to work on that and are available to actually do it?
Like, I think yes, actually, because to a certain extent we need this functionality, as Mika said as well.
And many other teams need that as well. And so the question, because if I had to evaluate the amount of people and time, that is probably 2 engineers, 6 months, something like that. 3 engineers, 3 months, or 4, something like that. So that's not like the largest item, but it's not a small item
Not a
either.
small one. Yeah.
So it's medium size.
And you meant like these engineers were full time on these changes.
Yeah, I'm usually referring to full time because I think it's a loss of efficiency to make people like context switch between different things, every time.
I agree. Just we often have to context switch as we are waiting for
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
people, but I see what you mean.
Because
might work actually. It might work.
Yeah, because we might also combine forces with Verify. In the Verify, we are struggling with capacity, but maybe there will be one engineer available. We will need to talk with Jackie about that.
Or you also mentioned package. Maybe they have someone.
Yeah, also package, which is not Verify.
Package is very, very short-stabbed since the
like everyone
actually.
these days. But, yeah, so let's think about that. Let's start the Google Doc. Maybe then we will probably need to have some. So what greatly helped me to actually, let me show it to you. what greatly helped me to actually get us to work on something. Where is that? I will just find it. Just give me a moment. MDK. No, it's GitLab architecture. It's there's one blueprint in which I where is that? MDK. It's here, and partitioning. Partitioning. It's not here. One moment. I'm almost there. Okay, it's here, and there is this iterations. Okay, so let me share my screen. So this is the thing that I did actually. It's very simple Gantt chart in a design document, but it greatly improved the way in which we could plan out the work and actually get people, like schedule their time to do something. So that was really, of course, like it's slightly outdated. We are probably not here, but we are here. But there are major milestones and work stream described. Something can be done in parallel. It's also visible in here. And I think in this particular case where we have a couple of design documents, like we may not be able to reason about how to do that without having something like that. Right? So I don't know if it would be helpful for you, Victor, but once we know what we want to build, I can collaborate with you on building this Gantt chart, and maybe only after you see that you can actually make a commitment to.
I think that would be really good, much better than what often engineering allocations provide.
Yeah, exactly.
3 to 9 months.
Yeah, then it's always twice more time plus 30%.
Yeah.
But always.
Yeah, this was nice to see actually. Yeah.
So I can paste the link from the agenda as well for your reference. Yeah, so I think that it would be a major win for us to actually build something this year. That would be like completely amazing. So I also think that at some point this year, this is going to appear in the product OKRs, like product level OKRs for the whole company as a major item to compete with GitHub. We still do have this care about compete with GitHub, right? And
with AI.
Yes, right now with AI, but then it's, in my opinion, at least, it's not much smaller item than AI in terms of competing with GitHub, right? The AI is this this thing that is right now very inflated, maybe in some ways, but the events, steps, actions, that's the fundamental value, right? Fundamental value that is making engineers productive without doubts. But there are maybe some doubts with AI right now, but with this there are none, in my opinion.
It reminds me of Service Mesh. It was on
So
fire.
Yeah, Service Mesh used to be a very popular item some time ago, but people are using meshes. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. So any questions?
It's really about the time frame, because as you mentioned that there are these competing proposals today in at least in the CI events MR.
Just proposals for syntax, right? It's not the proposal of how it should work, but how to describe those relationships between events, pipelines in a configuration files. But if we want to build what Mikhail suggests, kind of decoupled from CI, then we probably can do that without being blocked on CI events proposals.
I think what we need. I think what we need shouldn't be actually that decoupled from CI. At least my immediate ideas are really around like it's more that it's for example, one specific topic I'm thinking a lot about is to have a self-contained release artifact. And by self-contained, I mean that the artifact has the logic on how to deploy the application that's referenced in that artifact. And that lends very well itself for regulatory industries where you have these very clear deliverables that one team has to give it to another team for the deployment, actually. So, and there the idea is that, okay, I want to run this artifact. I want to deploy from the artifact what's included in that artifact.
What about
And not that
configuration and secrets? You can't have them
those
as
are
part of.
referenced. Exactly. I haven't seen any great solution in the industry yet. The closest to this is the cloud native application bundle specification. The idea is simply that the bundle knows about the inputs it needs to receive for environment variables, and it can reference secrets that it should be able to access in the environment where it's run. And these are defined in the bundle in the sense that it knows that these are the inputs that it requires.
Where does it get deployed to? Kubernetes, probably?
It's totally platform independent.
Like, how is that possible? Like,
because the logic, the deployment logic is part of the bundle. So basically you need a runtime that can open up this bundle, set up the environment for to access the secrets and the environment variables necessary, and run the image that describes how to deploy itself. I mean, another part of the bundle.
but how can you describe how to deploy something without knowing where you are deploying into?
I see what you mean. The deploying into part is part of the environment setup, actually.
So
like in our case, like in GitLab's case, if GitLab could run such a bundle in the pipelines, and then you specify that it should be deployed to the gprod environment, and gprod knows how to access its cluster. In our case, it's a cluster, it's a Kubernetes cluster. But in other case, it might be just AWS credentials, and it's called the invocation image in the bundle knows that this is.
But isn't it like the environment setup required to deploy something? Isn't it like 95% of the deployment procedure? Like, it's, if I had to deploy something, it's like 95% the environment and 5% is everything else. So do I understand correctly that this deployment bundle allows you to describe this 5%, whereas the 95 you need to provide as an input?
In a sense, you are correct, and that's why I'm not happy. That's one of the reasons why I'm not happy with the setup.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, we can definitely think about that. Yeah, but my like feeling is that with the CI events, it's a quite refined vision, and there are not many unknowns. With what you want to build, there are much more unknowns. So I think maybe the next steps would be you describing somewhere in a Google Doc, for example, the use cases that you have to, maybe we'll be able to find an alignment between what you want to build and either GitLab CI events, or maybe actually another solution would be better, better for this purpose. But it's very difficult for me to give that recommendation without actually knowing what you want to build. So maybe we can also like with describing those things in parallel.
Yeah, actually, from my point of view, I think that most of our requirements can be actually fulfilled by CI events, except that they shouldn't be called CI events. That's my kind of, like, I would say 80-90% of our requirements for sure can be fulfilled.
Yeah, because what's interesting is that
like typical.
Yeah, we do not plan to describe those events in GitLab CI YAML. Like, it's probably going to happen in separate files, probably like .gitlab/workflows. So we can, instead of using GitLab CI events, we can call this feature GitLab events. And even though, initially at least, all those things will run on runners,
But that's
we can
that's
then
they should do.
move away from it in some way. So maybe that's the most obvious Porik solution here.
I agree. That's why I said that I think we can have some engineering time dedicated to build out that part as well, because so it's like a very specific use case that we would like to have is there is a package that got published, now deployed, and today you have to write it into your pipeline that in one job I publish the package, in the next one I deploy it, instead of just noticing that there was a new package and do that, or update manifest based on that. And
because how we could do that, we could, for example, add an event package available, right? Then GitLab CI events, or GitLab events, you could describe a job that's going to deploy that package.
Exactly.
The package might become available through a build where it's being built, or you can build that externally and send it to GitLab, and both actions are going to emit the same event, and then deployment starts. So there are many, like I really like events because those allow you to model your workflows in a way that is completely unavailable right now. Like what we have right now, it's more like procedural. With events, you can move to a bit more declarative configuration with much more flexibility and additional abstractions, different data sources. So it's just the next level of flexibility, right, compared to what we offer today.
So to add to what Victor, to extend what Victor suggests, this is step one, as I see it. Like the step two, you can imagine that we give people tools to build operational dashboards that give them buttons to run workflows. So, for example, okay, you got to deploy it automatically. What if you want to roll it back? Or what if you want to say, if during first 2 hours, this threshold is crossed, which is done by monitoring, not us. Like basically this alert fires, which was triggered by this threshold being crossed, then roll this back. It has nothing to do with CI events, CI, specifically CI, right? But it's a workflow where you deploy things, then you for 2 hours wait, and while you wait, if this event happens, which is a threshold being crossed, then you do this. If not, end workflow.
So
actually, it's I would complicate a little bit that. So let's take a canary rollout. Like,
and canaries
roll out like, for 1%, you monitor the metrics. If they are good, roll out 10. You monitor if they're good, roll out more, or you roll back if they are not good. So it's like it needs to handle both situations, and it happens 100% outside of GitLab or this thing.
So that's really cool, and I can give you some context about our immediate plans for what comes next after we deliver GitLab events, CI events, non-CI events. We want to make it possible for users to subscribe to any arbitrary event, and there is going to be a GitLab sync API endpoint into which you will be able to push events, right? So GitLab receives an event, presumably in the cloud events format. And with GitLab events, there's a subscription for it already. So the event can be, threshold 10% achieved, or the rollback requested, or anything else, because those are the arbitrary events. And with the proper gateway implemented, we'll be able to send them to the events dispatcher in the GitLab CI events, non-CI events. And this will allow you to do something, right? So that would be something that, in my opinion, would almost entirely cover your use case.
It does cover, but I think I want to point out an important difference. Where if you think about events, it's a building block. And what I'm kind of conceptually imagining to give user a higher level building block, which is a workflow. that where you can manipulate different events as it's a workflow, like this waits for that, this waits for that, and so on. Not just, okay, event, what happens, event, what happens. That's a lower level, kind of lower abstraction approach.
Yeah, and that's also on the immediate roadmap, because with that solution, you can do something when we see an event, but after you do that, you can also emit another event, also arbitrary one. And with that in mind, it's not an event do something, it's event do something, emit an event, do something, emit an event, do something, and like you have infinite, almost infinite. We probably need to monitor how long it is, how long this transaction is, but this makes it possible for you to model any workflow you would like.
Anything else from anyone?
Maybe just action items. So maybe so 2 Google Docs, one to describe how this technology could look like given what we already know about GitLab events in GitLab CI events design documents. Maybe Mikhail can start that. I would try to comment on this as soon as it's available. And Victor, maybe you could take this action item to actually build a simple list of features you would, you potentially use GitLab CI events for. And in my opinion, if we build that, and I will ask the package team to do the same, and in Verify, once we have like a clear list of 20 or 30 features being blocked by this single abstraction that is missing right now, I would think that it would be a very clear message to our product leaders, for example, that this is something that we actually need to build soon. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep, it does actually.
Cool. Then we know everything. So yeah, feel free to send anything you have to me. I can comment on that. Feel free to ask questions if you have other ideas. We should brainstorm. Feel free to schedule meetings. I'm available. For me, that's a very important feature that I would really love to see being built. So yeah.
Cool.
Oh,
Thank you for the call.